Batman 136 or Legacy 901. I really like that they're doing this. Keep it
I
up.
do too. This way, we all win, right?
Mm.
None of us can complain.
Yes. And that is where my positive thoughts on this issue end.
Oh, thank God. Well, no. I'll give it one more.
Oh, sure.
The Batacombs. I'm all there for that name.
Sure.
That's on the first page, but then my thoughts end.
Yeah, I mean, I don't dislike it as much as the last two issues. I mean, I'll say that.
It's an issue of fluff.
Mm.
And I think if you throw this issue in the middle of a really fun run, and it's just this fluffy break, like, yeah, that's okay. But when it's supposed to be this return after this really dark arc, like this is, Bruce is really mentally subjected to a lot of stuff, and this is supposed to be like, showing how almost broken he is. I think it goes a little too far with the fluff.
I think my issues with it are that when we left the regular universe and we followed him to this other universe for a while, like, Failsafe was still like doing stuff, and I feel like there's no, like, they talk about Failsafe, they say he's still out there in this issue, but it doesn't feel like he's got the city by the balls anymore or anything like that. He's just kind of not around.
No, he's definitely not actively hunting for Batman either, like you'd think maybe he would be.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think I was interested when he first brought up the Batman of Zur-En-Arrh, but now that we're still doing it and Bruce is still getting into his mind and talking to Zur-En-Arrh, I'm just kind of like, I'm so down in all the concepts that he's playing with right now in this story. Even down to the fact that when he goes to see Selina and Selina mentions, oh, by the way, Cobblepot faked his death, he's not dead, and Bruce is like, what?
He has a full breakdown, like, what? I didn't kill him.
That's why Failsafe wanted to like come after me. You've seen all of this happened for nothing?
And like, he's like, you're not meant to keep secrets from me. She's like, yeah, well, you weren't meant to keep secrets like Failsafe. And he's like, well, that was a secret from me too. Like, then how am I supposed to work with this?
Yeah, also, I think the art's a little, like, there's a lot of faces in this that I'm not super into. Particularly,
I get that.
Particularly whenever, like, we're looking at sort of a slightly down angle at someone's face, I feel like they look especially kind of rough.
There's when Selina's in disguise and she goes to take a bite of the sandwich, and there's the shock of when she sees Bruce. It's one specific panel that I just think looks rough. There's a trend as well. I'm noticing now. Women, when they have their mouths open, and for whatever reason, there's a panel of Babs that did the exact same to me, where I'm like, oh, that's kind of a weird panel.
Yeah. So the important things in here, other than just generally Bruce is having a bit of a nervous breakdown because of everything that's going on, is and the family being there for him. It ends with this kind of happy bit towards the end where like all the family have lured him back to the mansion to like hang out and have dinner because he's refusing to like relax. Is that the Penguin kids, the twins, are expanding the casino business, and Bruce goes after to hunt some of that.
That doesn't go amazingly.
No, because the son ends up having like super strength or something and beats the shit out of him.
I don't even think he's super strong. Like, it just sounds like because Bruce like, oh, he's fast, he is strong, and I underestimate him. I don't think he is. I don't know if he is super or not, or if he is just
maybe, yeah,
very strong, like in a human sense, though.
Also, he's hiding the fact that he's missing a hand and he's got like a robotic hand from everyone. Yeah. Which I'm just see, as soon as his hand was cut off, I got annoyed because I'm like, this is something that we're going to have to deal with for ages, and then there's just going to be some weird like fix for it where someone gives him a perfect like looking hand that's actually cybernetic underneath. And I'm like, until we retcon everything again, I'm going to have to know that he's got like a cybernetic hand now.
Or do we still have that cloning device that Scott Snyder created?
Oh, I hope not.
Because we can just grow a clone and chop its hand off and sew it on.
This is kind of like that stuff where just conceptually, I don't like something you've included here, and annoyingly, it's going to just technically be there persisting until everything's retconned. Because you can't just like bring his real hand back all of a sudden, unless there's magic involved, I guess, which maybe they will. I don't know.
Has he got a robot hand at the minute? I'm like blanking already. It's just that forgetful, the hand stuff.
He's got, when he's talking to Mr. Terrific at the start, he's got what looks like a sort of dark hand. So I assume it's some sort of mechanical thing, or they never really go into it as exactly what it is, but
Like, yeah, I know he's wearing the gloves to cover it up, but I guess it's just robot hand.
Yeah, well, that's just the easiest explanation, I guess.
Yeah.
Or did he get something last issue at some point? I can't remember.
I don't know. I was too busy being angry.
Also, there's a bit of dialogue in here that really stuck out to me. Right, I don't think Zdarsky's voice for Batman has typically been that great, but there's a line in here that sounded really off. It's the sort of thing I can see Nightwing saying. I can see Dick saying this and with a smirk in his face and it working. But especially given his Batman state right now, where he's like in a super dark place, like you said, after everything he's went through.
He's basically broken.
Yeah. He shows up at the sort of the mini casino, because they're doing like little separate casinos outside the Iceberg Lounge, like little private ones around the city. And he finds the Penguin kids, right, the twins. And he comes in, and the daughter says, I've heard you've already, you were dying or something, Batman, right? And Batman says, I don't die, ask your father. And that's fine, if a bit mean. But the next part is, if you've got a Ouija board handy. And Batman wouldn't say that.
Yeah, it's so weird as well, because Zdarsky had such a great voice for Batman in the miniseries they did.
The Night.
On the name. The Night, thank you. I had such a great handle on him there, and then we were so excited for this run based on that.
Yeah, based on that, I'd say even more so based on his Daredevil, which had the right sort of dark tone that I was expecting.
I think a combination of we've seen he can do it on Daredevil, and then he proved he can write Bruce. We saw it in that mini, and then this is just miserable.
It's the sad thing is that we're back to the regular universe, so obviously I'm happy that's over, but it's left
now it has actual repercussions, though.
Yeah, like it's left all these things dangling, and like there's all these just elements of who the character is right now, that because I didn't like that story and I never really bought into what he was going through in it, that I just don't like having to deal with any of it now. So like, I'm not sure, and we've got Night Terrors to deal with, and then we've got that stupid crossover with Catwoman that's going to take up 2 months. I mean, like Batman's in a rough place right now for me. Like, I am so not excited about any of this.
I mean, like, I don't want to read Batman right now. Like, I just don't. I kind of feel like I have to because Batman.
Yeah.
But I don't want to. And knowing that I've got to get through Night Terrors and then that Catwoman crossover, I feel like I'm going to be forced into reading the Catwoman book as well, otherwise I'm going to have no context.
Yeah, for 2 months. It's kind of weird that Batman is like so up on the echelon of like what constitutes the important books at DC that it feels like for us to actually to just not read it would take an astronomical amount of shit to get us to that point, I think.
Honestly, by the time you get into September, October, it might be starting to feel that way.
It may, but I feel like on some level I'll read this for the show just to talk about how shit it is at a certain point. And there's not a lot of books I'll do that with, right? Because I'll at the very least I'll put it this way: Zdarsky's still relatively easy to read. It's not that much of a chore to get through this, even though I don't like any of it. Whereas a lot of books that I don't like because I think they're a pain to read. And if they're a pain to read, I just don't want to read them. This is a little bit different than that. So, anywho, so yeah, Bruce is hiding, like he's shut off his like suits like system so Barbara can't see what his heart rate and stuff is and all that nonsense. He's being super secretive. He has this fight with Selina that he ends up finding out that Penguin's not actually dead. And it's just all a bit iffy. And I think what hurt that scene with Selina even more is that I knew we're building up to this crossover where she takes over the city, and it just made me like so not interested in what she's doing right now because I just don't like that direction. You know?
It's one of those things where I'm not opposed to that direction inherently.
No, I agree, but like, I mean, specifically in the sense that they've just announced, we're doing this crossover in like a couple months, and she's going to be at this point. Like, if Ram V's Catwoman was building up and it got to that point naturally, I wouldn't have a problem with it, right? But I feel really sad that I'm this down on who Selina is right now because I was really into her stuff for a while.
Okay, to play slight devil's advocate, for all we know, the current Catwoman book might be building towards that in a natural way. We're just not reading it.
Okay, yeah, but that's a fair point. Yeah, I can't really argue with that.
Yeah, because us not liking the book and the style doesn't inherently mean that it's not pacing its own story beats correctly. Because I don't think that was it. We only read one issue, but that was not something we could judge from that.
That is a fair point. But I suppose it's... I think if you were reading that story and assuming you like it and assuming it's doing the right beats, like, you would probably feel that she feels right in this conversation. I think for me, she felt like, oh, Selina's kind of like angry now. Like, she has this kind of vibe to her that's different from like the last few times she's interacted with Batman, even post all the near wedding stuff. It's had kind of like a sort of sweet scent. Like, you know, I don't even think it was that long ago in Detective that she popped up and helped save them for an issue, and it had kind of this like, okay, we didn't get married, but we still clearly love each other and we'll still be there for each other when the time, you know, calls for it. Whereas this felt more aggressive and more...
I mean, it was right off the bat where she was like, oh, you're coming to arrest me now?
Yeah, it was very...
Whereas I don't think even like a year ago, I don't think we'd have even been considering that was an option.
Yeah, very strange. So, and maybe you say, like you say, the Catwoman solo book has built her up to this, but it's not the Catwoman that we've seen relatively recently in other books. And I think,
yeah,
you know, that feels a bit jarring because of it. So they all come over. The Bat family all come over for some dinner, and he's all happy about it. But then he imagines the room burning on fire. Because the sad part is that, and I said this a lot during this last arc, where like, conceptually there was like one or two good ideas at the center of it that I kind of liked. You know, like there was that moment early on in that arc where it was like, oh, this is a Gotham and it needs a Batman, so I'm going to be the goddamn Batman. I actually kind of liked that moment in and of itself.
Bruce finding his inspiration of just necessity.
Yeah. And I think the core thing here that I kind of like on paper is the idea that it's a story about him scared that he's going to lose the Bat family, and he's like worried about, and he like in a kind of not even because there's actually a danger of it, but because he's in this bad place where he's like becoming insecure about them.
There's a really great kernel of an idea in that Bruce realizes he's getting old and he's getting slow. Like, he underestimated the Cobblepot twin. Like, he's like, this is why I don't think it was supposed to be that he's superpowered. I think it is Bruce is getting old. He's off his game, and he knows it, and that's why he's scared, because he doesn't like. He keeps saying in this issue, Batman has to be perfect. Batman is fine. Bruce can be broken, but Batman has to be great. And he knows he can't keep that up because he is getting too old.
And that's probably building to something, which is fine. Like, and that's an okay direction.
It's the sort of thing where I would hope, I don't think it is, but I would hope almost this story is building to Bruce's retiring almost.
Yeah, not that we seriously expect that to happen, but just that in theory that's what it should build to.
That's where it feels like the seeds that this is planting right now, that's the direction I feel like, in a year's time, give or take, we should be looking at Bruce being like, right, one of you, who's stepping up?
Which, it's almost a shame if it does go down that route, because that's a really big story to tell in Batman. It's a big milestone story that'll change things. It's a real shame if I'm like just miserable the entire way because I don't like how the story's actually been handled. And even more baffling is that it's by a writer who I thought could do a good job and isn't.
Ballsiest move would be Zdarsky to build up that entire story, set off as Batman's over, not Batman's over, but Bruce is retiring. He's hand off the cowl to whomever, and then you start a new issue 1 with a new writer, and it's new Batman, not Bruce. You stick with it, and then you go, hey, I set it up for you. Go wild.
Hey, I mean, I was on team Dick should still be Batman. When that happened, and
over a decade ago,
and I'd still be happy if Dick was still Batman, and we just kept going down that path. But
while I love Dick as Batman, I don't want Dick to be Batman again. I think maybe this is the time for Tim to take a shot at it. I think Tim's the most natural successor in many ways, and I think it would give Tim something to actually do with his recent identity crisis. I don't even mean, because like Tim's got a book right now. Quality aside, he has a book. He has something to do, objectively speaking, in terms of, there's a regular appearance of Tim, but he doesn't have a. He's for the last few years he's been going through an identity crisis. Is he Red Robin? Is he Robin? Who is he? What's his purpose in the Bat family? I think him stepping up and having to be Batman would be a really interesting thing to do with Tim right now.
Yeah, I think it's almost like the medium of comics itself has shot this in the foot a little bit, because I still think Dick would be the perfect choice, except for the fact that we've done it already. That's the only kind of caveat to it.
And the fact that he does not want to do it.
That's why he makes him perfect, though. Like, it's the reluctant part that makes it even more tantalizing.
Oh, see, I get that, but for me, him being his own thing is still more interesting. I think Tim doesn't have that role that he's ever grown into. They tried with Red Robin, it didn't stick. I think it's still reluctant but not in the same way as Dick. It will be more of a, am I ready to do this? And then he'll be going the whole time where this is only temporary. I'm only Batman until Damian's ready to claim that mantle, and he has to. And over the course of the story of however long he's Batman, he has to earn, not just to prove that he's Batman in general, but just for himself that he deserves it as much as Damian will do one day.
It makes sense to go down that path. I'm not sure that's what we're building up to, though. But
nor am I. That's kind of wishful thinking almost. But
and the thing is, even if it builds up to exactly what either of us want or expect,
there's the point of, well,
it doesn't.
We're not enjoying it right now.
Yeah, it still doesn't make these issues, issue to issue, any better. And
no.
A lot of the fundamental problems are things like just the voice being off, or just the characters feeling off.
It's so weird because like parts of it are, the concepts are just not things we like right now. Like, all the stuff with the other universe, the hand. It's things in concept that we don't like, but there are things in concept we do like Batman growing old. These things like that. But then there's the execution where some of it, I don't think there is a problem with the execution. Like I say, it's even though it's worse, it's an easy read. It's not overly dense. It's not like really hard to read. The voices are there. I'd say pretty still the most of the time. The voices are fine.
Most of the time, it sticks out when they're not, though.
Yeah, but you do have those moments where things aren't quite right. Things aren't clicking. And it's a weird thing where it's just not coming together in multiple places. It's on different levels where it's kind of fumbling.
And it's not really in this issue, but there's been kind of a problem that's grown over his first two arcs where Zdarsky leans into the because Batman a bit too much. Like, as much as it was a fun issue to look at and actually read, like, Batman surviving descending back through orbit on like a bit of metal was like, oh, this is the most ridiculous, silly shit. Like,
yeah, and I thought Tynan was pretty egregious at because Batman and just throwing new gadgets at everything, but at least that was I could understand that was coming from a place of, I want Batman to have fun with gadgets and cars and cool shit.
But at least I had gadgets that were there to do the things. This it feels like here he just
cooler gadgets than shark repellent.
I mean, at least I understand what the point of that was. That was like a reference.
Yeah, no, but that's the problem. It was too much of just, this is a reference. Hey,
it was tons of that. Oh yeah, like there was that moment where you hit the Batman 89 page, and then I was like, wait, what are we doing? And then it starts going through everything. It's like, oh, here's the animated series, here's Beyond, here's Dark Knight Returns, here's other famous, comic book stories and shit.
Yeah. I had to actively go against the point of things like Dark Knight Returns with the joke and just be like, hey, did you kill him? Like, as if it wasn't intentionally like a mystery for decades.
Ah, dear. Yeah.
I really hate that issue, if you can't tell. I really, like, that's one of the worst issues I've read in a long time. And I read some shite that patrons make me read.
Oh, dear. Yes. Honestly, it's funny because I think that we read that issue right around the same time I saw the clip from The Flash where Michael Keaton says, "Let's get nuts." And it was like the perfect synchronizing of just like the same problem on both fronts. It was
just a complete misunderstanding of the point of why it's there and what's fun about it and what people actually like.
Yes.
And just, hey, you recognize this?
It wasn't a goddamn catchphrase, okay? Anyway, the backup is Batman, basically just back in the days of like the creation of Failsafe and like Zu&R taking over and building Failsafe, and that's basically it. There's not really much to add, to be honest.
Some nice art.
Yeah.
Mike Corona. That's he was doing the Batgirls book, right?
Yeah. I like this art more than the main story.
I do as well.
Yeah. But it has that problem though, where I just sort of looked at it and went, "Oh, we're doing the creation of Failsafe." I'm kind of over this at this point.
I enjoyed the visual, just the fun kind of like, hey, it's a fight scene basically. It's Batman versus Failsafe in like a training fight to see how Failsafe's progressing. I enjoy it from a visual point of like, hey, this is some kind of fun action. Corona looks great. But I mean, the story is just like, whatever. It's like 7 or 8 pages of fluff again.
Yeah, I'm bored of fluff. You know that? I'm really, I'm getting really.
Yeah, I want some meat.
All right. Well, what are you rating Batman then?
I'm gonna give it a 4.5. I don't think it's terrible, but it's just below average of what I expect.
Yeah, I'll give it a straight 5. I think my logic is that it's a perfectly fine put together comic from a craft perspective, and that it's really easy to read and whatever. But I just don't like the story or conceptually what it's doing right now, and some moments where the voices are off, and some of the art I don't like. So yeah, I'll go 5. I don't want to go straight into like seething hatred territory because it's not.
Oh, I give the last issue a 1.5 score. So just for some context.
I mean, I think that's maybe a little on the harsh side, but I did not like it either.
It made me angrier than any comic I've read in years. It deserved it.
Oh yeah, Batman's in a rough place right now.